Seattle in late October had that damp electric chill that seeps into everything. The streets shimmering under the neon glow, the air humming with the pulse of a Friday night. Inside the Crocodile, the sound of guitars and the smell of cheap beer mixed with excitement. Aaron Patel, a junior at the University of Washington, was in his element. 21, bright-eyed, with a camera slung over his shoulder, he was the kind of guy who noticed everything, but rarely said too much about himself. "Man, this place is insane tonight," Eli Brooks shouted over the music, his grin wide, a half-empty cup in hand. Aaron nodded, eyes on the stage. It's their last show before they move to LA. I wasn't missing it. Beside them, Lena Morales swayed with the rhythm, her curls damp from the mist outside. She was Aaron's best friend, his anchor in the chaos of college life. "You deserve a break, genius. You've been buried in that internship all week," she teased. Aaron smiled faintly. "Just trying to make it count, you know?" The band hit its final chord, and applause flooded the room. When the lights dimmed, the crowd spilled out into the streets of Belltown, laughing, buzzing, alive. Aaron pulled his phone from his pocket. "I'll catch up. Need to make a quick call." "Don't vanish, Patel," Lena said, smirking. "We're grabbing food at Pike Place." He gave a small salute and disappeared into the drizzle. Outside, the sound of rain blended with the faint echo of music from nearby bars. Aaron crossed the street, phone pressed to his ear. "Hey, it's me," he said quietly. "Yeah, I think I found something, but I need to be careful. No, not here. We'll talk tomorrow." His voice lowered. "Someone's been watching me, I'm sure of it." The line cut. Aaron looked around, the empty street glistening, the hum of a city that never truly slept. A shadow moved behind him, quick, deliberate. He turned, half smiling, as if expecting a friend. "Eli? That you?" Silence. Just the rain. Moments later, his phone slipped from his hand and landed face up on the wet pavement, the screen still glowing faintly. By dawn, all that remained was that phone, found near the waterfront, its last call unanswered. The following morning, Lena's call to Aaron went straight to voicemail. So did Eli's. By afternoon, concern turned to unease. By nightfall, panic. When his parents, Rajesh and Sunita Patel, were notified, the city's heartbeat shifted. A missing student in Seattle wasn't uncommon, but Aaron's disappearance felt different. There were no signs of struggle, no clear witnesses, no reason at all. And just like that, the name Aaron Patel became more than a face on campus. It became a question echoing through every dorm room and street corner in the city. Before we go deeper into the mystery of that night, make sure you're subscribed, because the truth behind Aaron's disappearance will take us further than anyone in Seattle ever expected. By Saturday morning, word had spread across the University of Washington campus. Aaron Patel was missing. His friends gathered outside his apartment, their faces pale from sleeplessness and disbelief. Lena stood by the front steps, clutching her phone like it might ring any second. "He wouldn't just disappear," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Eli rubbed his temples, pacing. "We've called everyone, his parents, his professors, even the concert venue. Nothing. No one saw him after midnight." Detective Harold Sims from the Seattle Police Department arrived before noon. A veteran in his 50s with a calm, methodical tone, he introduced himself with a firm handshake and a notebook already open. "Let's start from the beginning. You were all at the Crocodile together?" Lena nodded, recounting every detail, the laughter, the music, the moment Aaron stepped outside for that call. Her voice trembled as she said it. "He said he'd meet us at Pike Place." "He never showed." Sims took notes quietly. "And you're sure he didn't sound upset?" "No," she replied, then hesitated. "Actually, he sounded distracted, like something was on his mind." By afternoon, missing person flyers appeared on every lamppost and cafe window downtown. Students printed hundreds more, plastering them from the U District to Capitol Hill. The city's pulse shifted. One student gone, and suddenly Seattle felt smaller, darker. That evening, the Patels arrived from California. Rajesh Patel stepped out of the taxi with his wife's hand in his, both exhausted but determined. Sunita's voice was steady, though her eyes betrayed panic. "Where's my son?" she asked the officer standing by the building. No one could answer. Detectives began canvassing Belltown, interviewing bar staff, street vendors, and anyone who might have seen a young Indian man in a dark jacket near the waterfront. A waitress remembered serving him hours earlier, smiling, quiet. "He tipped well," she said. "Nice kid." As the sun sank over Puget Sound, volunteers gathered by the pier with flashlights, combing the wet ground for anything: footprints, clothing, a wallet, a clue. The air smelled of salt and rain. Lena joined them, her shoes soaked, her breath visible in the cold. "Aaron," she called softly into the night as if he might answer. Then a flicker of hope. A young man claimed he'd seen someone matching Aaron's description near Pioneer Square around 2 a.m. "He looked lost," the witness said, like he didn't know where he was going. Police checked the area but found nothing. Still, that detail, lost, lingered in Lena's mind. Aaron wasn't the kind to lose his way. Something had happened between the concert and that call. At 10 p.m., Detective Sims met with the Patels again. "We'll keep searching through the night," he promised. "We're treating this as a priority case." Rajesh nodded, his voice low. "My son wouldn't run away. He was careful, thoughtful. Someone took him." Outside, the city lights reflected off the wet pavement, and the flyers fluttered in the wind like desperate prayers. Seattle had begun to search, but it had no idea what it was truly looking for. By the third week, the posters had begun to fade under the Seattle rain. The bright photos of Aaron, smiling, confident, were now water-stained reminders of a mystery that refused to fade. News vans still parked near the university gates, their antennas reaching toward a grey sky heavy with drizzle. Lena walked through Red Square, clutching her coffee like it could warm more than her hands. Sleep had become a stranger. Every night, she replayed that moment outside the Crocodile, Aaron stepping into the mist, his phone glowing in the dark. "You should have gone after him," she told herself again and again. Across town, the Patel family sat in a hotel conference room with Detective Sims and a spokesperson from the Seattle Police Department. The air was thick with exhaustion. "We're following every lead," Sims said, his tone steady but tired. "Tips keep coming in." Rajesh leaned forward. "Tips aren't answers, Detective. My son has been missing 23 days. You have cameras on every street corner, but no footage of him after he left that venue." Sims hesitated. The camera facing the alley behind the club was offline that night. Maintenance issue. Sunita Patel closed her eyes. "Offline," she repeated softly, the word cutting deeper than it should. Outside the press conference, microphones flashed as reporters pushed closer. "Mrs. Patel, do you believe your son is still alive?" one asked. Sunita didn't answer. Her silence said enough. Lena's online campaign had grown into something much larger than she'd imagined. The hashtag #FindAaron was everywhere, shared by students, influencers, even local bands. People sent in messages, theories, sightings that went nowhere. One photo showed a man on a ferry who looked almost like Aaron. For a moment, hope flared, but when police tracked it down, it was someone else entirely. Eli tried to keep himself busy, throwing energy into his classes and pretending to study. But guilt gnawed at him. "Maybe he just left," he muttered once, sitting with Lena in the dorm lounge. She looked at him sharply. "Left?" "Without telling anyone, without his car, his wallet, his family." Eli stared at the floor. "You don't know what people are capable of when they're under pressure." Lena's voice softened. "Aaron wasn't like that. He didn't run from things. He faced them." The following weekend, volunteers gathered again by the waterfront. Police dogs swept the area while drones scanned the riverbanks. The cold wind carried the smell of salt and decay. Nothing new was found, just debris, bottle caps, and the endless sound of the tide. As days bled into weeks, the case began to lose traction in the news. Another missing person, another unanswered question. The cameras left, the volunteers went home, but Lena refused to stop. Every night she updated her online board of clues, connecting dots that led nowhere. In her latest post, she wrote, "It's been 32 days since Aaron vanished. Someone knows something. Someone saw him that night." The post went viral overnight, reigniting attention. But behind every comment and share, one haunting question remained. Where was Aaron Patel? It was a Sunday morning when the call came in. A jogger along the Duwamish River had spotted something tangled in the reeds near the waterline, a backpack soaked and covered in mud. Within an hour, police tape surrounded the area, and Detective Sims stood over the evidence with a sinking feeling. The tag on the strap read A. Patel. Lena arrived before the scene was cleared, breathless and shaking. "Is it his?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Sims didn't answer right away. He held up a gloved hand, examining the contents as they were carefully laid out. A water-damaged notebook, a flash drive, and a concert wristband from that night. No wallet, no phone. "It matches the description," Sims finally said. "We'll confirm with his parents." Lena stared at the river, its slow current reflecting the grey sky. "If it's here," she whispered, "then he was here." Later that day, Rajesh and Sunita Patel arrived at the precinct. The backpack sat sealed in a clear evidence bag. Sunita reached out, her fingers trembling before she could touch the plastic. "This was his," she said, her voice breaking. "He used it every day." The discovery reignited the media frenzy. News outlets replayed the footage of the riverbank, reporters speculating endlessly. But for those closest to Aaron, the find brought only deeper confusion. There was still no trace of him, no body, no signs of a struggle. Just a backpack that had somehow survived months of rain and current. Lena met Eli that night at a small cafe near campus. Neither spoke at first. The hum of the espresso machine filled the silence until Eli finally muttered, "Maybe he fell in. Maybe it was an accident." Lena shook her head. "No. You know Aaron. He hated that part of town. Said the river made him uneasy. He wouldn't just wander there." Eli sighed, avoiding her eyes. "Then what are you saying?" "That someone put it there. I don't know," she admitted, frustration slipping into her tone. "But it doesn't make sense. Why only his backpack? Why now?" A week later, police released part of the forensic report. The mud and algae patterns suggested the backpack hadn't been in the river long, maybe a few weeks at most. That detail shattered the fragile timeline everyone had clung to. Lena stayed up all night rereading Aaron's old texts, scrolling through every message she could find. Most were mundane, class schedules, jokes, music links, but one caught her eye. A message sent the day before he vanished. "Got something big to show you soon. Just need to make sure it's safe first." She stared at the screen, heart pounding. What was he talking about? And safe from who? The next morning she brought the message to Detective Sims. He looked at it for a long moment, his brow furrowed. "We'll have the tech team go through his phone records again," he said quietly. Lena nodded, though her stomach twisted with dread. Something was starting to surface, something darker than anyone had imagined. By the summer of 2012, the search for Aaron Patel had turned into little more than a file-collecting dust at the Seattle Police Department. What had once been front-page news had slipped quietly into the background. One more unsolved case in a city that had learned to live with unanswered questions. Detective Sims sat at his desk one morning, flipping through the evidence photos. The backpack, the muddy notebook, the faint print smudged on the zipper that led nowhere. Every lead had ended in fog. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no trace of foul play. Just absence. Clean, unnerving absence. When he called the Patel family to update them, his voice was careful. "We're keeping it open," he said. "But without new information." He didn't finish. Rajesh understood anyway. "Without new information, our son stays missing," he said quietly, then hung up. Lena refused to let the silence win. Her apartment was a shrine to Aaron's memory. Walls covered in maps, notes, and screenshots of every article ever written about him. Strings of red thread connected dates, names, and places that no longer made sense to anyone but her. "There has to be something we missed," she whispered one night, tracing the route Aaron might have walked that final evening. Eli visited less often. When he did, he looked worn down, his eyes hollow. "You've got to move on, Lena," he said one afternoon. "You can't keep living inside this." "Move on?" she snapped. "He's still out there somewhere." "You don't know that." She stared at him for a long moment. "No," she said finally, "but I believe it." That fall, the university held a memorial vigil at Gasworks Park. Hundreds showed up, students, faculty, and neighbors who had once shared flyers and hope. Candles flickered in the breeze as the Patel family stood by the water. Sunita spoke softly, her words trembling. Aaron was kind. He believed that truth always mattered, so we will keep searching for it. When the crowd dispersed, Lena lingered by the water's edge, watching reflections ripple across the lake. "You're not gone," she murmured. "You're just waiting to be found." But as weeks turned into months, the world kept moving. The flyers were replaced by new ones, the social media campaign slowed, and even the police stopped calling. Seattle's rhythm swallowed the story whole. In December, a brief report aired on the local news. Despite extensive investigation, the disappearance of University of Washington student Aaron Patel remains unsolved. The anchor's tone was neutral, the kind used for stories that no longer shocked anyone. Lena turned off the TV and sat in silence. Outside, rain tapped gently against the glass. She closed her laptop, the folder labeled Aaron Files still open on the desktop. Somewhere deep down, she made herself a quiet promise. If no one else will look for him, I will. And as the city prepared for another new year, the cold case of Aaron Patel settled into the shadows, waiting for the day someone would bring it back to light. Seattle in 2023 was not the same city that had swallowed Aaron Patel's name 12 years earlier. The skyline was brighter, sleeker, and colder. Tech companies had taken over the old warehouses. Cafes buzzed with remote workers and quiet ambition. Yet in a small apartment near Capitol Hill, one story refused to stay buried. Lena Morales sat at her desk, headphones on, the faint hum of her recording equipment filling the silence. The title on her computer screen read, Cold Echoes, Episode 1, The Disappearance of Aaron Patel. She stared at it for a long time, before pressing record. 12 years ago, she began softly, a college student walked out of a concert in Seattle and was never seen again. His name was Aaron Patel. He was my best friend. Her voice caught, but she didn't stop. For years I thought the truth was lost. But what if it wasn't? What if it was just waiting for someone to ask the right questions again? When she finished the intro, she leaned back and exhaled. The podcast wasn't just a project, it was a promise she'd made to herself long ago. The first episode aired the next morning. By afternoon, it had thousands of downloads. Listeners flooded her inbox with messages, theories, encouragement, even apologies from strangers who remembered the case but had long stopped caring. One message stood out, a simple note from a retired police officer. "You should talk to Detective Harold Sims. He's got things on his mind about that case." 2 days later, Lena met Sims at a diner overlooking Lake Union. He looked older, grayer, but his eyes were still sharp. "You're digging up ghosts, Morales," he said, stirring his coffee. "That case almost broke me." "I just want to know what really happened," Lena replied. Sims sighed. "We missed things. Back then, resources were thin. Digital evidence wasn't what it is now." "Maybe, but we should have pushed harder." She leaned forward. "You said we missed things. What kind of things?" He hesitated. "There was an evidence box from Aaron's apartment, never fully processed. It's in archives somewhere downtown." That single sentence lit something inside her. "Can I see it?" He smiled faintly. "You didn't hear that from me." That night, Lena walked home through the drizzle, her thoughts spiraling. The idea of reopening Aaron's case scared her, but doing nothing scared her more. The past hadn't let her go, and maybe it never would. Before bed, she reread an old message Aaron had sent her just a week before he vanished. "I'm finally starting to understand how deep this goes." "Talk soon," she whispered into the darkness. "What were you trying to tell me, Aaron?" The next morning, she opened her laptop and began typing Episode 2, The Missing Evidence Box. Her voice was steady as she spoke into the microphone again. Sometimes the truth doesn't disappear. It just waits for someone brave enough to find it. Listeners didn't yet know that this story, 12 years cold, was about to change everything. The Seattle Police Evidence Archive smelled of dust and time. Rows of unmarked boxes stretched endlessly, each holding a story that had slipped through the cracks. Lena stood in front of one marked in fading ink, Case 2011-457A, Patel, Aaron. Her pulse quickened. This was it. The box Sims had mentioned, untouched for more than a decade. The clerk, a young officer named Daniels, hesitated before handing her the clipboard. "You're authorized for 1 hour," he said. "Technically, these aren't supposed to leave the premises." "I just need to look," Lena replied, signing her name. Inside the box were items sealed in transparent bags, familiar pieces of a life frozen in time, a keychain with the Space Needle charm, a folded UW parking permit, and a laptop covered in old stickers. Beneath them lay a small black USB drive labeled Private. Her breath caught. "How did they miss this?" she whispered. Daniels frowned. "It's probably been checked, but I can't say for sure." Lena slipped the drive into her pocket, guilt twisting in her stomach. She'd tell herself it was for the story, for justice. But deep down, she knew it was personal. Back at her apartment, she powered up an old laptop disconnected from the internet, just like Aaron used to do when he wanted privacy. The USB opened instantly. Inside were folders with odd names. Eclipse Project, data logs, encrypted. Most files were unreadable gibberish, strings of symbols and numbers, but one stood out, a single text file labeled "Read this, Lena TXT." Her hands trembled as she clicked it open. "If you're seeing this, it means I didn't make it to tomorrow. Don't trust anyone from the internship. Something's wrong with the data. They're covering something up. I need more proof before I go public. If you care about me, stay out of it." She stared at the screen, the words blurring. He had known. He had known something was coming. The next day she called Detective Sims. "You missed a piece of evidence," she said sharply. Sims sounded weary but curious. "What did you find?" "An encrypted USB, and a message from Aaron warning me to stay away from his internship. He mentioned something about data manipulation, something being covered up." Sims sighed deeply. That company he interned for, Greenspire Technologies. They shut down in 2012 after a federal audit. Environmental compliance issues, maybe more. If he found something, it could have put him in danger. "Then we need to reopen the case," Lena insisted. "It's not that simple," Sims replied. "The evidence chain's broken. You publishing anything now could compromise the investigation." But Lena wasn't listening anymore. Her mind was already spinning, replaying Aaron's final message, the late-night call he made before vanishing. It wasn't random. He'd been scared, and now she knew why. She whispered to herself, "You were right, Aaron. It wasn't an accident." When she turned off her laptop, the city outside her window glowed through the mist, alive yet indifferent. Somewhere out there the truth was waiting, and Lena Morales had just cracked open its first door. Lena hadn't slept. The glow of her laptop illuminated a cluttered desk, coffee cups, and scattered printouts of articles about Greenspire Technologies, the startup where Aaron had interned before disappearing. The company's downfall had been sudden, its executives evasive during the 2012 investigation. Officially, it was over. Unofficially, it smelled like a cover-up. She replayed Aaron's final voicemail for the 100th time. His voice was quiet, urgent. "I think I found something, Lena. Something big. I'll explain tomorrow." Tomorrow never came. At noon, she visited the university archives, searching for anyone who had worked with Aaron during that summer. One name kept appearing in the records: Mark Hensley, founder of Greenspire and former environmental consultant for the state. He'd vanished from public view after the company's collapse, until she found a recent article about his new venture, Hensley Innovations, Bellevue, WA. Lena wrote the address in her notebook and stared at it. "You knew him, didn't you, Aaron?" she murmured. That evening she called Detective Sims again. "I found a name," she said. "Mark Hensley, Greenspire's CEO. He's back in business under a different company." Sims sounded skeptical. Lena, corporate rebranding isn't exactly a crime. It is if your intern disappears after exposing you, she snapped. He paused. Be careful with that assumption. You're not an investigator. Then do your job, she replied, hanging up before he could respond. The next day, Lena drove to Bellevue. The building was modern. Glass panels, manicured lawns, the kind of place that looked too clean to hold secrets. She stood across the street, watching employees come and go until she saw him, Mark Hensley, older but recognizable from the old press photos. Sharp suit, calm expression, the quiet confidence of someone who believed the past was buried. Lena approached as he got into his car. "Mr. Hensley," she called out. He turned, polite but guarded. "Do I know you?" "My name's Lena Morales. I'm a journalist. I'm working on a podcast about Aaron Patel, your former intern." For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe fear. "I remember him," he said slowly. "Smart kid. What about him?" "He disappeared after uncovering something at your company. Do you know what it was?" Hensley's jaw tightened. "That was 12 years ago. The investigation cleared everyone." "You're digging in the wrong grave, Ms. Morales." "I think I'm exactly where I need to be." He gave a small forced smile. "Be careful. Old stories can destroy new lives." Then he drove off, leaving her with more questions than answers. Lena stood on the sidewalk, heart pounding. His tone wasn't dismissive, it was defensive. There was something he didn't want uncovered. That night, she recorded her next podcast entry, her voice steady but charged. "Today I met a man who built an empire on silence. Aaron Patel worked for him. And now 12 years later, he's still afraid of what Aaron knew." She stopped recording and whispered to herself, "You found something, didn't you, Aaron? And now, I will too." Detective Harold Sims hadn't expected to see the Patel case file again. When the call came from the Cold Case Division, his first reaction was disbelief. "After 12 years, he muttered, flipping through the reopened report. Inside were Lena's recent podcast transcripts, the recovered USB logs, and a new forensic memo from the evidence lab. Something had changed. That same morning, Lena sat in her apartment, her phone buzzing with messages from listeners. The latest episode, about her confrontation with Mark Hensley, had exploded online. Thousands of people were sharing it, demanding justice for Aaron. But among the chaos was a message that froze her blood. "We found something in storage. Call me." It was from Detective Sims. When she arrived at the precinct, Sims met her in the hallway, his face unreadable. "You stirred up quite the storm," he said. "I didn't do this for attention," she replied. "You said something about new evidence." He nodded. "A DNA sample. It was recovered from Aaron's jacket years ago, but the technology wasn't advanced enough back then. We ran it through the updated system. We have a match." Lena's pulse quickened. "A match? To who?" Sims hesitated. "We can't say until confirmation, but it's someone close to him." The words hung in the air like smoke. "You mean a friend?" she pressed. "I can't say more, not yet." She left the station shaken, her mind spinning. Who could it be? Eli? One of their classmates? It didn't make sense. Aaron had trusted them all, or at least she'd believed he had. That evening, Lena met her producer, Mia, at a quiet cafe. "You think the police will tell you who it is?" Mia asked. "They will," Lena said firmly. "Or I'll find out myself." Mia frowned. "Be careful, Lena. The story's big enough already. You're walking into something dangerous." "I've been in danger since the day Aaron disappeared," Lena replied. Across town, Detective Sims sat in his office, staring at the lab report. The name glared back at him, impossible yet undeniable. He rubbed his forehead, muttering, "God help us." He knew the fallout this would cause, the community, the Patel family, the people who had moved on believing Aaron was just another unsolved tragedy. The next day, Lena recorded her newest update. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. After 12 years, the Seattle Police Department has reopened Aaron Patel's case. New DNA evidence has been found on his jacket, evidence that points to someone who knew him personally. She paused, letting the tension build. We don't know who yet, but we will. Listeners could hear the conviction in her tone, the same quiet fire that had carried her through every sleepless night. Later that night, her phone rang again. It was Detective Sims. His voice was low, almost apologetic. "We have confirmation," he said. "Who is it?" He exhaled slowly. "Lena, it's someone you're not going to want to believe." Her hand tightened around the phone. "Tell me." Sims hesitated. "It's Eli Brooks." Lena sat in the dim light of her apartment, the phone still pressed to her ear. The words Detective Sims had just said were echoing in her mind like a drumbeat, each repetition more absurd than the last. Eli Brooks. Her mind refused to process it, each syllable hanging in the air, uncomfortably familiar, yet unthinkable. "No," she whispered, shaking her head as if the motion would somehow undo what she had just heard. Sims's voice was steady, but there was an undercurrent of discomfort. "Lena, I know it's hard to accept, but the DNA on Aaron's jacket matches Eli. I don't know how it fits yet, but we're going to question him." Lena's throat tightened. The words she wanted to say caught in her chest, but all she could manage was a quiet, "How?" "I don't know," Sims admitted. "But we need to confront him. We can't afford to wait." Lena's mind was racing. Eli was Aaron's best friend, his roommate. They'd spent countless nights together, shared secrets, laughed until they couldn't breathe. The idea that Eli could be involved in Aaron's disappearance felt like a betrayal on a level she couldn't even grasp. It made no sense. When she hung up, the room seemed smaller, the air thicker. The weight of the revelation pressed down on her. Was it really true? Could Eli have done this? Her fingers hovered over her phone as if she might call him, confront him directly, but her gut twisted. The Eli she knew would never do something like this. But then, how could she be sure? The next day, Lena sat across from Eli at their usual cafe, the table between them feeling like an ocean of distance. He was sipping his coffee, eyes tired, but not meeting hers. For a moment, there was only silence. "You're not going to believe this," she finally said, her voice low. "I spoke with the police. They found something. They found your DNA on Aaron's jacket." Eli stiffened, his hand freezing midair. "What?" Lena's voice trembled. "Eli, they're going to question you. They're going to arrest you." His expression was a mixture of shock and disbelief. "Lena, I don't know what you're talking about." He dropped his coffee cup, the porcelain clattering loudly on the table. I didn't hurt him, I swear." Lena's heart clenched at the desperation in his voice, but doubt gnawed at her. "Then why was your DNA on his jacket, Eli?" Eli's eyes darted around as though searching for the right words. "I don't know. I don't know why it's there. But I didn't hurt him, Lena. You have to believe me." The sincerity in his voice wavered under the crushing weight of the situation. Lena didn't know whether she believed him or not. Every part of her wanted to trust him, to believe the version of Eli she'd known for years. But the evidence was damning. "You've been hiding something, Eli," she said, barely above a whisper. "And I need you to tell me the truth. What happened to Aaron?" Eli's face crumpled as if the weight of the truth had finally broken through his defenses. He exhaled sharply, his eyes brimming with something between fear and regret. "Lena, I didn't mean for it to happen. It was an accident, but I never meant to hurt him." The words hung in the air, but they offered no relief. Lena stared at him, torn between her friendship and the overwhelming sense that the man sitting across from her was hiding something far darker than she could have ever imagined. The small interrogation room was stark, its walls a dull shade of grey, lit by harsh fluorescent lights. Lena sat on one side of the table, her hands trembling slightly as she folded them together. Across from her sat Eli, his face pale and gaunt, his usual confidence shattered by the gravity of the situation. The silence between them felt suffocating, stretching long enough to make Lena's throat dry. Finally, she spoke, her voice breaking the tension. "Eli, I need you to tell me the truth. What happened to Aaron?" He looked at her, his eyes wide, like a man who had just woken from a nightmare. His hands rested in his lap, fidgeting nervously. "I swear, Lena, I didn't hurt him," Eli said, his voice a mix of desperation and disbelief. "It was an accident. It just happened." Lena leaned forward, studying his face. "An accident?" "Eli, you don't make sense. Why would your DNA be on his jacket? Why didn't you tell anyone? You were his best friend. You were his roommate." Eli shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his gaze darting to the door as though searching for a way out. "I couldn't. I didn't know what to say. I was scared. It wasn't supposed to go that far." Lena's breath hitched, her heart racing as she felt a cold chill spread through her body. "What wasn't supposed to go that far?" Eli's eyes filled with guilt, and for a moment he didn't speak. When he finally did, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Aaron found something. He found out about the data, about Greenspire's illegal deals. He wanted to go public with it, expose everything. I couldn't let him do that. It was bigger than both of us." Lena's stomach churned, a wave of nausea hitting her as she processed his words. "You stopped him from going public?" she asked, her voice tight. "You did something to him, didn't you?" Eli looked away, a tear slipping down his cheek. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. He confronted me and we argued. He wouldn't listen, Lena. I pushed him. He hit his head when he fell. I didn't know what to do. I panicked and I hit him." Lena's heart seemed to stop. Her mind couldn't fully grasp the enormity of what he was saying. "You killed him?" she asked, her voice shaking. "No!" Eli's voice cracked as he shook his head furiously. "It was an accident. I never meant for any of it to happen. I swear, I didn't mean to hurt him. The words faltered, and for the first time Lena saw a crack in his facade. The calm, collected friend she had once known seemed to crumble, revealing someone deeply broken. "Why didn't you come forward, Eli?" she asked softly, her anger and pain turning into something else entirely. Pity. "I couldn't," he whispered, tears flooding his eyes. "I didn't know how to explain it. How could I? You're the last person I wanted to hurt, Lena, but I didn't know how to make it right." Lena's mind was spinning, the pieces finally clicking into place. The betrayal, the lies, the deep, sickening truth of it all. "You don't get it, Eli," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. "You already made it wrong." She stood up, her legs unsteady, and turned to leave. The door clicked shut behind her with finality. Eli's confession hung in the air like a heavy fog, suffocating everything in its path. The news broke like a tidal wave. By the end of the day, Eli Brooks, Aaron Patel's best friend, roommate, and once trusted confidant, was the most wanted man in Seattle. His arrest shocked the community to its core. Headlines flashed across every screen, each one more sensational than the last. "Best friend of missing UW student confesses to murder," read one, while another asked, "How could he have hid this for so long?" Lena watched the chaos unfold from her apartment, her stomach twisted in knots. The phone calls, the texts, the messages from strangers who now had opinions about something they had only heard about in passing. The truth had come out, but it felt like it had shattered everything she knew. She hadn't expected forgiveness, not from the city, not from the Patel family, and certainly not from herself. But the weight of Eli's confession, of everything he had done, was still too fresh, too raw. Her phone buzzed, and she looked at the screen to see a message from Rajesh Patel. "Lena, we're having a memorial for Aaron this weekend. We know it won't bring him back, but we're hoping you can join us. It's time to remember him the way he lived, not the way he died." Lena felt a lump form in her throat. She hadn't seen the Patels since the day the case had gone cold all those years ago. A part of her wanted to run from it all, to keep herself distant from the pain that still lingered. But another part, the part that had always loved Aaron, the part that had kept searching, knew she had to be there. The memorial was held at Gasworks Park, a place Aaron had loved. It was a place where memories of him, of his laughter, his quiet intelligence, his endless potential, had been woven into the fabric of the city. The morning was cloudy, but the park was filled with people, friends, classmates, and strangers who had followed the case over the years. They all gathered, the soft murmur of conversations blending with the rustling of leaves in the wind. Lena arrived early, standing by the lake as she watched the sun peek through the clouds. She had always found comfort in that lake. Its stillness reminded her of Aaron's ability to stay calm in any storm. She had always thought he was indestructible. When Rajesh and Sunita arrived, they were quieter than Lena had expected. Their grief was palpable, but there was also a sense of quiet dignity. Rajesh extended his hand to Lena, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything, Lena. You were his best friend." She couldn't find the words to respond. Her mind was still grappling with Eli's confession, the realization that Aaron's life had been taken by someone so close. She just nodded and stood beside them, watching as friends and family began to share stories, to laugh, to remember Aaron for the person he had been. Lena finally spoke, her voice fragile but strong. "We'll never forget you, Aaron. Your truth came too late, but we won't let anyone forget the man you were." She took a deep breath, the weight of everything falling over her as she looked out over the water. For the first time in years, she felt like she could let go of the search, but she would never let go of Aaron's memory. Not now, not ever. The video was unassuming at first. A simple file on Eli's old laptop, buried among documents and photos. It wasn't encrypted or hidden behind layers of protection. It was just there. Lena had no idea what to expect when she hit play, but the instant the screen flickered to life, her breath caught in her throat. Eli's face appeared on the screen, a bit younger than he looked now. He seemed nervous, eyes flickering between the camera and the desk in front of him. He took a deep breath, then spoke quietly, almost as if speaking to himself rather than the camera. "If you're watching this," he began, "it means things didn't go as planned. Aaron's gone and I don't know how to fix it. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, but it did. And now—" His voice cracked, and for a moment he paused. It was the kind of pause that could break a person open, a moment of rawness that revealed more than the words themselves. "I didn't know what to do." He wouldn't stop. Aaron was onto something about Greenspire, about the deals they were making behind the scenes. He kept saying he was going to go to the press, that he'd blow the whole thing wide open. Eli ran a hand through his hair, looking down at the desk, avoiding the camera. "I told him to drop it, to let it go, but he wouldn't listen. He was stubborn. So damn stubborn." Lena's stomach churned. Her fingers gripped the edge of the desk as she watched Eli in that moment, before the camera caught his face again, this time clearer, more desperate. "We fought," Eli continued, his voice low. "I lost it. I pushed him, and he hit the ground. His head hit the concrete, and he didn't move. I thought he was dead. I panicked. I didn't know what to do, Lena. I didn't want to lose everything. I didn't want to lose my future. I didn't want anyone to find out what we were really doing at Greenspire. I didn't want everything to fall apart. So Eli's face twisted in anguish, tears beginning to well in his eyes. "I hid him. I moved him. I thought maybe if I just kept him hidden long enough, if I could bury it deep enough, everything would just go away. I never meant for him to die. I never meant for it to end this way." The video cut off abruptly. The screen turned black, and for a moment, Lena sat motionless, the weight of what she had just heard settling over her like a storm cloud. Eli had confessed, but it didn't feel like a victory. There was no satisfaction, no sense of relief, just more grief, more confusion. Lena closed the laptop with shaking hands, the reality of Eli's actions echoing in the hollow space between her and the truth she had been chasing for years. The city had its answers, but the cost of those answers was too high to bear. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Sims. "We've confirmed everything. Eli's facing charges. The Patel family has been notified." Lena read the message again, the words sinking in, but they didn't feel like the closure she had hoped for. She walked to the window, staring out at the Seattle skyline. The city was still waking up, indifferent to the darkness that had unfolded. For a brief moment it felt like nothing had changed, yet everything had. The confession had broken the case wide open, but it had also broken something else inside her. The days after Eli's arrest blurred together, Headlines screamed about the fall of a beloved college friend, and the city's collective shock rippled through the streets of Seattle. But for Lena, there was no relief, only an overwhelming sense of emptiness. The truth had come, but it felt as though everything that was once whole had been shattered beyond repair. She sat at her desk, the pile of notes from the case, now an overwhelming mountain of evidence and emotions. Eli's confession, the police reports, the interviews with the Patel family, they were all pieces of a puzzle that no longer made sense. Lena ran her fingers over the worn surface of her old recorder, the device she'd used to capture every breath of this case. Her phone rang, breaking the silence. It was Rajesh Patel. "Lena," he said, his voice heavy, "I wanted to thank you for everything you've done. It's been hard to accept all of this, but the truth, it's finally out." Lena swallowed, the weight of his words pressing against her chest. "I'm sorry, Rajesh. I didn't want it to end like this." "I know you didn't," he replied softly. "But you brought us answers. You helped us understand. That means more than you can know." She stared out the window, watching the rain start to fall again. It had been a constant companion throughout the investigation, soft, relentless, as though the city itself was mourning. "I just keep thinking about the man Aaron could have been," Rajesh continued. "The man he was going to be. He was going to change the world, Lena. That's what he wanted." Lena's throat tightened. He already did. He changed everything. After the call ended, Lena felt more exhausted than ever. She had chased the truth for so long, but now that she had it, she wasn't sure what to do with it. Aaron's story had ended in a way that was hard to comprehend. His life stolen by someone who had once been his closest friend. His legacy reduced to a tragic tale of betrayal. Later that afternoon, Lena went to the Patel family's home for the memorial. The house was filled with family and friends, a quiet crowd that spoke softly and moved slowly through the rooms. They had gathered to celebrate Aaron's life, not his death, but it felt like the weight of his absence was felt in every corner. Lena stood in the back, watching Rajesh and Sunita as they shared memories of their son with those who had come to honor him. She heard the soft laughter of those who had known him best, his childhood friends, his professors, the people who had once believed in his potential. For the first time in weeks, Lena allowed herself to smile, thinking of Aaron not as the victim of a tragic crime, but as the man who had left an indelible mark on the world. Later, as the evening wore on, Lena found herself standing by the window again, staring out at the rain-soaked streets. The darkness of the city seemed to mirror the weight inside her, the sense of loss that would never truly fade. But there was something else there now too, a quiet understanding. Aaron's truth had come to light. It had cost more than she could have ever imagined, but it had also brought justice. The kind of justice that wouldn't bring Aaron back, but the kind that would ensure no one would forget him. As she turned to leave, she looked back one last time, letting the memories of Aaron's laughter echo in her mind. In the end, that was what mattered most. The morning after the memorial, Lena sat in the same cafe where she and Aaron had spent so many hours talking about everything and nothing. The hum of the espresso machine and the chatter around her felt foreign now, as though the world had moved on without her. She stared at her phone, the screen dim, waiting for something, anything, that might make sense of all the chaos. There had been no closure, not the kind she'd imagined. She had expected a sense of peace after everything had unraveled, after Eli's arrest, after the confession video, but instead she felt empty, caught between the past she couldn't let go of and the future that seemed unclear. Her podcast had been a success, a way to share Aaron's story with the world, but it hadn't been enough. It hadn't fixed the broken pieces. It hadn't brought him back. She scrolled through her old messages with Aaron, laughing at some of their inside jokes, crying at others. The weight of his absence hit her again, sharp and sudden. The questions that had haunted her for years still lingered. Could I have done something sooner? Could I have saved him? Her phone buzzed, a message from Sims. "Lena, I need to talk to you. Call me when you can." She sighed and dialed his number. "Lena, Sims said when he picked up. "I know things have been rough, but I wanted you to know that Eli is cooperating. He's been honest about everything. The case is closing, but I know it doesn't feel like it for you." "No, it doesn't," Lena replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "It doesn't feel like anything is finished." Sims paused. "I understand, it won't bring Aaron back. It won't undo what's been done. But we finally reached the end of this. Eli will face the consequences, and Aaron's name, it'll be remembered for who he really was, not how it ended." Lena glanced out the window at the city passing by, the steady rain falling again over Seattle. The same city that had taken so much from her, but had also given her something. The chance to tell Aaron's story, to uncover the truth, and to bring justice. It wasn't enough to heal the hurt, but it was something. "Thanks, Sims," she said, hanging up the phone. She sat there for a long moment reflecting on the journey, on the people she'd met, the truth she'd uncovered, the pain she'd felt. And yet, somewhere in the midst of it all, she found the strength to keep moving forward. She stood up and left the cafe, the weight on her shoulders still there but not as heavy. The past was not something she could change, but the future. That was hers to write. Aaron's memory would live on, not just in the cold case files or the headlines, but in every person who heard his story. In the small ways she had fought for the truth, and in the way she would continue to do so. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a soft light on the wet streets as Lena walked forward, knowing that, in time, she would find peace, not in the answers she'd received, but in the journey itself. And with that she knew, some stories didn't end, they just changed shape.